So, like I was telling Anthony, in the morning I felt out of place. Right now I feel more comfortable with the crowd disappearing. So,
Clap louder.
You know what, Chitra, Rajnikant says this perfectly when he said, even if I'm late, I'm still the latest.
it's good you mentioned late because I'm always in tiff with time. so, the whole idea about starting Mographies, which is also a play on words, was actually very, you could say, a bit juvenile. I was willing to take a risk on many things because immediately when I finished architecture, so I'm a very picky person. I said, no, I'm not going to work for a firm like that. Not going to work for a firm like this, like that. Very picky. I took a break for like, I think 4 or 6 months. And so along came GMR. They had like a vacancy. Maybe there was no other person they could find. And I kind of joined in the team because a lot of people rejected and I got in. And it was such a fascinating thing because for me it was like airports are not getting built every day. So it was a fascinating period until the senior management started building up. And that's when hiccups started coming. And I think in 2 months I was sick of the corporate lifestyle, but I was told to stick on, like Chitra, at least a year. And so I was sticking around only because I loved the way in which the project was growing. There was so much to learn. It was literally systems thinking at work. Interdisciplinary teams, international teams, just a lot of complex issues coming along. I guess at some point I felt I missed the creative fun side. Like for instance, when the branding for the toilet blocks was going on, they're like, oh, or the pier blocks that was going on, they're like, India's all about spices and colors. And I was like, that's such a crude description or summification of what India is. And I felt really depressed and disillusioned with the whole world of architecture altogether. And at that point I said, to hell with infrastructure, to hell with development, to hell with the country going anywhere. I'm going to now start focusing on what pleases me and what energizes me and gives me joy. And for me, that part was visual communication. And coincidentally, I did get through and I was admitted in IDC, Industrial Design Center in IIT Bombay, where literally the first project that we were supposed to do, I was all about, let me combine my architectural background and visual communication. I want to do something in the exhibition space. And then the faculty said, is that really what you want to do? What is it that you really want to do? I said, I really want to explore animation. Go do that. And that's how this whole fascination with visual storytelling happened, because in terms of animation, I had my limitations. I don't really draw fast or quick or very skilled like the animation designers. And started exploring stop motion animation, and that was like exhilarating because it was part technology, part jugaad, part just impromptu work happening. So the first semester or the first project was all about animation, and I veered into understanding that, hey, so I figured a few things out with stop motion. What do I do? What kind of story do I make? Like, I don't have a story. And in that project, I figured out without the content, the medium is a total waste. Like, you can be the skillful or the most skillful animator, but what do you animate if you don't have a story? Cut to the second project, and I said, okay, let's look at a medium and let's design a medium. So I wanted to relook at the way dioramas were being made. So dioramas were like these, and the inspiration again comes from The Night at the Museum, the film The Night at the Museum, where the diorama comes alive. So somewhere the animation bug was always there. And I said, what happens if the diorama literally comes alive? Like, what if you see it moving or interacting or being more responsive and dynamic? So again, I started with the medium, which was very, very, highly criticized. They said, content is king. You cannot build a structure like an architecture. You cannot build a structure unless you don't know what you're building. So, you got to know what content you're working for. And I looked around and I said, I want to work in the space of interpretation, or specifically heritage interpretation. And the site that I picked was in Mumbai. It was a place called Shivri. And Shivdi has this interesting, complex setting. So it's literally like the backyard of Mumbai. There are these, so on one side you have the Bhabha Atomic Center, on the other side you have an old British monument, and you have this ship breaking yard, and there are these petroleum industries, their effluents kind of flow out there, and in that little mixture of stuff, flamingos from Kutch would kind of migrate, and they would pretty much. So it was a rare phenomenon in Mumbai to have a wildlife like that. And at that point, I think my rebellious mode began there, which is, why would I want to build an exhibition sitting inside, say, a science museum or an interpretation center when actual site is out there, and if something could pop up in a space like that. So I was pretty much trying to look at, so I know I'm from another generation which completely distrusts the whole authority of institutions or governments and things like that. So for me, it was more like, to hell with the agencies, I'm not going to run after them. What is it that I can do with the resources that I have, or with the associations that you can build? So I think the germ of the rebellion started there. And by the end of the project, I was actually not progressing much in the space, but then the project literally kept me thinking about what is 21st century ecosystem like. So I started thinking on the lines of ecosystem, where it's not just, and then there were so many stakeholders involved there, and then I was like, where do you begin from? And at one time it used to be a fishing colony, and those guys are now moving into informal labor, they're not into fishing anymore. So livelihoods are involved, people are involved, and the birds are really not bothered about anything, because however polluted it is, the water temperatures are such that algae growth is encouraged in such a habitat, so that invites the flamingos. So it just got a little too complex for me to handle. At that point, I have a lot of content, but I don't know how to present it. So, between the two projects, I realized it's never that one is better than the other. And when I graduated, I figured I'm interested in a space that I don't know if there's any workplace that invites a person to do or play multiple roles, because wherever you get out, it's like, so are you a visual designer? Are you a UI designer? Are you a UX designer? And I'm someone who doesn't like to be boxed, So I think ever since, like the last 7+ years have been my own whim or fit or fantasy or fancy to see how far my rebellion goes. And along the way, somewhere the revolutionary had to be pacified. So here's what I'm going to talk about in whatever has been explored over the last 7+ years is, you could say, bits and pieces of many things. But one of the philosophy that I was really looking for in, if I ever started work on my own, my whole worldview was having been informed from the master's project. I said, we live in the 21st century. And as a graphic designer, most of my work happens through softwares that are already pre-installed in my computer. And am I working on projects where I definitely need to be working with people in the present moment, or can I be working remotely? And if I can be working remotely, why then go to an office? Why have an office? Why work in a conventional way? So that was one big question. The other big question was that the ecosystem is so diverse and the market is so dynamic. In that situation, why would I choose to work for a dinosaur when I'm probably more agile enough to adapt and change to the courses of how the waters are flowing? So why not be this little entity? So I think for me, a lot of people when they graduate, they have this, I have a big dream, and counterintuitively I said, I have a very small dream, that I want to be small and as far as possible remain small. But my aspirations not be small, and the way I work. So a lot of people, when they say I want to grow, it's about building an entire monument. When you say growth, for me it was more about, if I ever want to grow, I'd love to be growing in a lateral way. Like I can still be a small entity and still be spreading far and wide. It's been like this lone warrior, rebellious mode. But along the way, I wanted to be like a painful experience also. I wanted to work on something that gives me utter joy. And what gives me utter joy is the flow, the creative flow of cooking up ideas or of converting things into stories and visioning them into ideas that can be plugged into ecosystems and looking at a systemic view of things and largely keeping the purview as wide as possible, seeing things from multiple perspectives. And I think in one word, if I had to sum up whatever I'm doing, it would be the word intangible, because everything that is intangible, whether it is emotions, whether it is something as a concept like time, whether it is ideas, all of that, as a communication designer, as a concept designer, my job is to translate that intangible phenomena into digestible chunks of information or digestible chunks of data. And what follows beyond this, what you see as a pretty graphic, a pretty interface or a pretty logo or a well-done branding, visual identity, all of that, according to me, is part of the communication design process. But largely what gives me utter joy or excitement is this phase of what I would like to call as a proto-design process. And I realized if I wanted to work on any of this zone, and if I were, being disconnected from this process, I really couldn't involve myself in making a pretty graphic without knowing the whys and the whats and the hows of why is it that you want to communicate something, or why do you want a pretty logo? Maybe you don't want a pretty logo. Maybe, asking these very basic questions became and then whatever I do to the outside world applies to me also, which is if I've been doing things organically as they emerge, I've been also reflecting on the process that what is it that went right, what is it that went wrong, did I enjoy that process or not? And somewhere along the way, when I finished, I think visual storytelling or storytelling was something that stuck onto it. So Mographies as a name was literally cooked up overnight because it was a portmanteau of 3 words, which just meant moving graphical stories with this really fancy aspiration that I'm going to be only doing motion graphics. And naturally along the way, it did come out as a difficulty, like you can't be doing solo projects forever. And so what I ended up doing is I held on to these names and then these words, and I started exploring. So graphical stories was easier to understand, but then if it's not an animation, what does the word moving really mean? So I think I've taken like a good 7 years to explore different varieties of moving. And that's why I say my equation with time is something which is very, very fluid, because I'm someone who believes in the elasticity of time on a very philosophical front also. So I think this is a question I end up asking more people or a lot of students. I also got into education along the way because I felt, there were so many things I learned in masters which were so basic. I said, why didn't I learn this back in school? Why didn't I learn this back in architecture? And again, so the rebellious another rebellious head that sprung around was around the area of education for me. So I kind of dabbled between the two. And for me, I think it's really important for me to enjoy what I do, otherwise it's actually no point. And for me, I don't see boundaries. Life and work kind of follow the same circle. If at all, work is something that grows around my life. So it's very important for me to focus on aligning what life is and what work is, and often they tend to blend. And I can afford to say that. In this process, when I asked myself, so what is your calling? I kind of came out with different range of work that I would like to do in terms of building stories. So I kind of came up with these 9 ideas, out of which, and these are part of my visiting card also. And the visiting card was also like a playful idea, which is, I think some of you have that, I don't know if you remember it, but so it also came in as an idea, as an icebreaker, as a conversation starter. I probably have it with me. So you could, like, if you can demonstrate. So yeah, you got to pick a card. Pull it out, and you got to flip it around. So that's supposed to be your life's calling or story. You can read out what it says. So it's story to enrich life. And yeah, so basically, try to enjoy and have fun with these little points of interaction. And as a micro practitioner, I should be really concerned about these micro interactions and how can I design these little bits and pieces. And I think that gives me joy. I'm happy doing small stuff. So yeah, there are different stories for different occasions, and some of these callings include empowering people, include empowering people who have ideas. So I'm happy playing the backstage role and supporting somebody else, which is what I pretty much do as a micro consultant, is whichever process you require any kind of support. So if you're in the phase where, like Kath had mentioned, so if you're in a process where you're trying to struggle or navigate between these multiple stakeholders and the conversations are just too cross or too conflicting, my role would be to silently listen in and map it out. And my process of mapping is not highfalutin graphics, it's just very simple diagrams and maybe systems mapping so that people know how things are interrelated, and I kind of bring in that fresh pair of eyes and fresh set of ears to listen to the context and map things in an unbiased way. And it's up to the facilitator of these engagements to kind of build that narrative, because what comes out of these fuzzy conversations and mixed emotions is what is going to help you, conjure your message. So this is like a proto stage even before your message is being designed. It's about knowing what your message needs to address in terms of needs. So I apply the design thinking approach here, which I want to talk about. So one of the mottos here is I keep reminding these keywords to myself, right? Why did I really start? And there are many times when I felt maybe I should, chuck the whole trail and, go find a job. And a lot of times I've been very adamant, very persistent about, no, I mean, there is, and when I say organic, a lot of things in organic growth have this very sudden, spurt of growth. So it'll be a very gradual growth for many years or many months, and suddenly there can be an upshoot. So I've been very optimistic about it, and if you're not optimistic, I don't know if you're going to make a good designer. So yeah, I think for me, small is beautiful has stuck around because it's more manageable. It helps me maintain that human connect. I can be more authentic with interactions. And talking about dishonesty in corporate, the corporate system may be dishonest, but it's made up of people, and I expect human beings to be authentic at some time in life. So for me, design thinking is not the hexagonal design thinking model that is being circulated around. Maybe it is that also, but I was trying to look at what is it that design really brings onto the table, because creative thinking is what artists have or any other layperson also has. Critical thinking is something scientists also bring onto the table. So what is it that designers bring in as a unique feature onto the table? And for me, I think the holistic thinking or the synthesizing or the synergizing aspect, what does that mean? Time, okay.
Even I thought the audience was really into it, which is I think.
So, also, I don't have great work to show, but I wanted to talk about the philosophies around which I've been building whatever little things that I'm doing. So for me, I think it started with,
5 could also be a 2 if you wanted the other.
So one of the areas I felt design is lagging behind is like 60 years into this, in this country, at least design the contemporary way we know it, like people are graduating with degrees in design. In spite of it, the large mass is like, design, acha, are you still in fashion design or graphic design? Beyond that, they're like, everything else is just humbug. And I was wondering what my previous generation really was trying to do. I mean, why is design still not a familiar phenomena? Like I told you, I've toned down over time. Like when I started, I was like, what the hell were these people doing? And now it's more about, I'm more compassionate that they were busy building their businesses. So it's fine if they haven't done anything. No, I mean, it's a reality. I mean, when you don't have the critical mass to really nudge anything around here. So I understood that process along the way. But what I really started out to do is, can design be democratized? Before even we could make a mark as a specialist in the ecosystem, we're already talking about divesting power into the people's hands. But we've come to a stage where there's just too much of power polarization that at least designers who call themselves to be problem solvers should realize that the power is something to be divested and distributed to the people, and as designers become these facilitators of conversations and power generation, so that people understand their sense of agency in any kind of change making, whether it's on a personal level, whether it's on a neighborhood level or a city level or a nation level. So this is what I really started with, and I was very hopeful that design does have a promising future in this country or in the world as I could see it. And mind you, I've been reading a lot of Western media, which is what I'm going to talk about coming to the next point. So what I really do is try to build like collaborative and a participatory approach in the simple dialogues that we have. So if someone says, so I'm looking at some kind of a message to be communicated, then this dialogue that we're having is also something that I like to capture as a visual, because I feel conversations just evaporate like a, like a camphor. And if you don't catch it, don't make it tangible, then you don't have like a reference. And I believe in walking the talk. So I'm all about the propaganda, about the value of visual thinking and the visual aspect of documenting content. I better apply it to myself. So and the whole context of storytelling coming into the picture is really, I feel, it's a no-brainer. Like we transact and communicate in stories, and even when you're constructing your messages or your messaging, it's largely targeting in building narrative. So storytelling goes like it goes with the whole idea of designing communications, and co-creation then became really important, because like I said, the joy of creating is magnified with the whole idea of the more the merrier, principle of working with people. So when you have diverse sets of minds working together and the ideas that bounce off, the variety of it is just exhilarating. And that energy is really important, because that's the energy that's going to drive the momentum further in any kind of a change-making process. And designers especially are constantly in any kind of change-making. You're making something out of nothing most of the time. So it's important to have that energy around with not just, like the traditional system was that the lone designer or the lone design studio was breaking their heads on the problem, and they're like, oh, the client is shit, and they're saying this, the design is shit. So it's like this us versus them that was being created constantly, versus a shift in the whole approach of designing, where you bring in the main people who are in the room, have needs, and give them the agency to say that this is what you need and this is what you want. But and that's why I wanted to, I kind of came into this whole field of facilitation, which largely looks at designing a process to it. And for me, as a problem solver, I really like the whole idea of literally wading through fuzziness. So if it's ambiguous, it's really fun to deal with that ambiguity, so that you can literally do this process of breaking or transferring the intangible into the tangible, and making it discernible and easy to go with the next stage of design. So pretty much what I ended up evolving over time, over the last few years, was to look at the design itself, design process itself, as a loop, but a loop with series of stages, where it's most important to even determine when somebody says, hey, I need a social media messaging, I think I need to go back to the beginning, that what is it that you really do, and is it really a social media message that you need, or so I kind of literally have been very picky and choosy, like Amir Khan. Like I say, if it doesn't fit my bill, I'm not going to take that project, to hell with this. And I think somewhere I need to do that. I need to take a stand, because that's a sad state of affairs with graphic design, that any work that comes along, you end up picking it up, whether it makes sense or not, whether it's something that you can add into your portfolio or not. And I think I've been very picky that this is not something that I want to do. On the other hand, what's happened is, so yeah, I've been kind of very fortunate, maybe it's the IIT ka thappa or whatever, I don't know, but I've been very fortunate to work with a range of people, whether they are Indian or whether they are a startup or whether they have been like Fortune 500 companies, and I'll tell you what work I've been doing there. I've not been doing any pretty work with them. I've been doing a lot of messy work with them, and I use my free time in making these interesting concepts that are fun for me. And it's easier to explain to people what is it that you really need so that you can pick and choose that particular. So this is like a atomization of the service model that I have, and literally picking and choosing what is it that you really need. And more often than not, I've seen a lot of experiential work clicking for me, a lot of live graphic work clicking for me more than any of the other zones. But I'm in the phase of trying to look at the most scalable model channelized into the other world, so in the other zone. So this is what I really want to talk about, which is in strategic space, why are visuals really important? And this takes me to an entire community of practice called graphic facilitation, which works with groups or group process facilitation, which happens within corporates, it happens in communities, it also happens in education. And this has been like a home, the second home for me after graphic design, which is to break down these fuzzy ideas. Like if you say an expert, what sort of expert are you talking about? And the moment you attach a visual to it, you are bringing it back to ground reality and helping people understand what is it they are talking about. Because in a room where people are ideating, the words just go here and there, and sometimes they don't even mean. Sometimes they're just fatigued with a deadline, and they're just sitting in the room because they're meant to be in that meeting. So if it's a well-designed meeting, then the outcome of the meeting is something that does come up with productive stuff. It's not, and working in GMR, I had the, maybe it's a sexist approach or something, but I was literally given the job of sit in the design review meetings and take down meeting minutes, because that's what the ISO says. ISO standard says, and I was like, I didn't study 5 years of architecture to be recording meeting minutes, but somewhere nobody knows how things, how the dots connect. But somewhere along the way, I think that's sharpened the way I listen to conversations and how I interpret those words or those ideas into visuals, because making maps was not new. Architects regularly keep making party diagrams and maps and mind maps and things like that. So it was a way of literally transferring skills, blending skills, and literally improving along the way. And I don't see a lot of people doing it. I haven't seen it, so I want to try it for myself. So typically what happens is they're given like very clear targets, and you can see this is a lot of messy and very down to earth kind of work. But what it does is, this is especially, so this was at IIAD, we were having like a curriculum design discussion, and literally there were ego clashes happening, and so the work was not progressing, not because people were not in agreement, but people were holding on to their own perspectives. And I felt at some point, enough of it, let's just put everything on paper and we'll see where we're stuck. And it kind of helped things move ahead from there. Otherwise we were pretty much stuck, and I think all of the brainstorming and ideas were literally being talked across the table, and I was surprised that nobody was really mapping it out. So yeah, so all of this is part of the ideation vision that happens at the senior level leadership, the C-suite, and I was kind of really fascinated to see how every organization is like a human body. Every human body has predictable set of ailments, which is very similar and predictable for organizations also. And no matter how people approach the issues, everyone had this thing that we have a challenge. What is our future, and what was our past like, and how can we improve certain services? Over and above this strategic work, this is the very first freelance project that I got, and I really enjoyed it because it had that sand animation memories coming back to me. But I think this is something I also held on as a personal motto, which is whenever I have like a deep idea that I'm really moved with, I'll kind of look at it as a meditative exercise that I kind of put all of my heart and soul into it until I kind of get to some level of achievement, and then it's time to look at another goal. But this is the other fun thing that I do, which is labor of love. a lot of community activities and a lot of experimentation with visual storytelling in a participatory manner in the public space, because the rebellion continues here, which is why should arts or design be something that you go and access in a museum? Why should people not see it in everyday spaces where they move? And moving on with that, so this is a project that Aishwarya Technos Architects was involved with, which is awareness building around Chandar Nagar, which was a erstwhile French colony. And I was brought in because she thought that the live graphic could be an interesting visual engagement, that literally I'm the exhibit there. So if I'm moving and making some doodles around, then people were kind of gathering around that, and they're like, oh, you're not drawing that properly, that's supposed to be a better version of this and all of that. And at least what happened is it brought people closer to the engagement, and we were co-creating a board game of sorts. So that was another way of engaging with the community. We were hosting workshops there, so I was a part of that. And all of this content was then transferred to a website which can be populated by anyone. So it's a dynamically changing website where what people consider as heritage can be mapped on the timeline of Chandanagar's plan and map. So this was an interesting blend of communication and architecture and revisiting that. So this is another project which was looking at can city have spaces like cafes or bookstores or any of these public corridors or open spaces where art exhibitions or art displays can be put together, and they can be interestingly curated and dynamically changing themes, and bringing in people who are either students who are creative and they don't get a platform, they can't afford a lot of expensive platforms, versus or it can also be people who are self-taught artists and designers, and just have these trained designers also get to interact with them. So have an interesting mix of activities going on, and Muse Express was what kind of came out of this, where you can see there's some live work going on, there's some displays, and all of this was low cost and something that I funded myself. And I think along the way what I've realized is that if you have an idea and you really believe it can work, then find the people in your network, and if you have enough support, go just do it. And I don't seem to wait for a lot of expensive infrastructure being used there. I'm looking at existing opportunities. So as a microbial enterprise, I would look at the existing ecosystem and what all I can tap within that. So it's like, if something like this can be done by one designer, I can assume more of these mushrooming here and there, which is what I'm pretty much looking at, is that if I don't get more support for this, I'm going to keep creating newer content, and until and unless I kind of find other partners to take this forward, the idea is still there. I mean, anyone can pick it up and do it. So it's more like a Creative Commons concept that is there. So Lived Design History started that way. In a very organic way, the Association of Designers of India had a WhatsApp conversation around this nostalgic piece of song written on design sometime in the 1970s, and it just came around that, so Lalita knew who the author was, and she said, I have a lot of stories about design. And I realized there's been a generation gap between the 1960s and now, and and if you don't have a platform, or you don't have an avenue to listen to these earlier designers. So I knew Lopez Design was working on Forum, but what I was looking at was more about learning these things firsthand from people who've lived those stories. So I haven't come across any kind of a design historic or design historian documenting things around what's happened in Indian design since the 1960s. And not just pertaining to NID, but looking at all other design institutions all over India. And there's wealth of knowledge there, but it's just nobody's tapping or looking at content like that. The other thing that I'm really passionate about is sharing this bit of creative knowledge, my 2 bits, with the community of learners and students and children, maybe even adults who are looking for alternative hobbies. And Fun Shop came along because I was looking at having fun with people, doing fun stuff, mostly, around animation and art, and just express yourself. And I'm nobody to tell you this is good art or bad art. but yeah, work with children and whatever I can do as a small agent of, like a creative citizen. So yeah, I've been kind of looking at opportunities of working. So this was part of a maker fair, and I've also been associated with the facilitation community. The group facilitation or the process facilitation community looks at engaging with people and is all geared towards collaboration. And along the way, I've also collaborated with fellow micro practitioners and realized the dearth of somebody sitting and coordinating the conversations. It is a huge burnout on the coordinator, but it's an important piece of workforce that is missing in most design collaborations where there are a lot of unnecessary emotions coming along. And I also get into looking at work, whatever work I do, whatever small work that I do or learning modules that I create, I try to look at documenting this in, say, conferences or through research papers, and also find interesting ways of engaging with people. So one of the communities that I'm actively trying to build is the Graphic Facilitators Community of India, where there are a handful of us who practice graphic facilitation for these corporate settings or in the non-profit settings. And the idea is to spread the awareness of visual thinking and try and imbibe this in your own practices, and also give us more jobs. So this is the other thing. So because I'm into doodling, this is another such initiative that this was in a cafe coffee day. So you just meet up, and there's just so many avenues possible in today's times that I kind of find it appalling when people say opportunity nahi hai. I mean, there's just opportunity everywhere. Are you interested? And yeah, so this is the other community that I'm actively involved with, which is the Delhi Storytellers Network. Delhi Storytellers Network, when it started, we were not great storytellers or master storytellers. We were just, again, a bunch of people who were interested in practicing storytelling as a mainstream profession. And and it started with this community engagement where we met at Oxford every month. We used to have these storytelling meetups. A diverse set of people would come and they would share their stories. And the whole idea was, can people connect with storytelling and revive their innate sense of connecting with fellow citizens, because there was a lot of online conversation going on, but a lot of offline was missing. And through these meetups, we also found or bumped into fellow storytellers whom I would kind of collaborate with, form small story formats or performance formats to kind of test out. And this is the last thing I want to talk about, which is a multi-trans, whatever disciplinary thing that I'm working on, where the whole idea is that, I find it very, again, irritating when people say, oh, there's a lot of fun stuff happening in the West. So I'm like, so why can't you do it here? And the whole thing is, there has been this, downgrading, self-downgrading or self-loathing of our own innate skills in India. We don't have a dearth of makers, we don't have a dearth of thinkers, and yet we don't have wow ideas happening here. And when I say wow, I'm looking at experiential, installations or products or designs where there is a sense of motion in. So the whole concept of Animascape is to look at, so we have different elements or principles of design, and one of it also includes dynamism and motion. And yet when we design objects or when we design experiences, they lack the dynamism. And I'm wondering what would happen if you add motion or dynamism or movement as an element of design, whether it happens in architecture, whether it happens in products, whether it happens in experiences. Because I was looking at animation or this whole field or emergent field called expanded animation, where animation is not just limited to the film that you see on a screen, but anything that's inanimate. So puppetry, like Dadi said, it's turning an inanimate object into an animated. Animation is nothing but adding motion or movement into something. So going by that primary primitive understanding of what motion is, what happens when you apply this to an object like a chair? What happens when you apply it to interfaces where the animation literally, so it happens through, it's not a new field, it kind of blurs with robotics, it blurs with interaction design, but somewhere somebody's got to start conceptualizing these. Building can always have an execution, you can always find people to kind of help you execute that. But the whole idea was to trigger this sense of interdisciplinarity that going forward, it's really lame to keep saying that I'm studying architecture, I won't look at animation. So this is something that it's being built over Facebook right now, but I'm trying to take this to, say, colleges or learning spaces where more of this idea can be triggered and more possibilities can be created for collaborations going forward. And that's the eclectic mix of stuff that I'm doing.
Actually, much more than bravery, I think the kind of integrity and honesty you need to constantly access through this kind of work is something that I think needs a. You need to take this to schools of design almost as a separate pedagogical arm that runs in parallel, because in design schools we are told that because we are storytellers, somehow it's okay to fib your way through things. So, and a lot, I mean, like, as you know, in architecture school, you make your concept sheet after you finish your final submission.
I used to hate that.
Right? So that's not integrity.
I wasn't doing that though.
Oh, well, you were probably the only one. So that's the kind of level at which I think this has immense value. The other two things that I noticed when you were speaking is that other than this idea of integrity or ethics or however you want to look at it, the other very important thing that is, I feel, going to be a crisis in this idea of storytelling that we all, across disciplines of design, try and embrace, is this, and for animation it's even more critical to think about, is this idea of deep fakes. Or to be able to, you see, in the crafting of animation, as opposed to the machining of animation, there is a difference, because there are certain stretches of imagination that you expect the mind to make rather than actually express it in graphical form, because that can be almost better than reality, better than the real thing, you know. And that's a little scary. When things start becoming better than the real thing, then you start giving up on reality.
This is with reference to the Animascape idea.
I'm saying that broadly, I see this like in architectural 3D rendering.
Okay.
Now, what's happening is that the 3D render oppresses the design. It literally oppresses it. You are not allowed to think of material.
You made a slave of that image.
Yeah, because that's outputted in an extremely controlled environment, whereas actually physically achieving that visual is very difficult and very problematic. So that's one thing, is that where I see this work being very relevant to designers through that ethical alley. Yeah, there is a risk, and we all need to be aware of it as designers, that we are kind of becoming slaves to images that are hyper real.
Yes. I don't do that, luckily.
No, I know you don't, but the fact is that animation will become more you know, the route to animation or 3D rendering is gaming. And gaming is becoming hyper real. And that is going to be...
That is a risk. Yeah, it is already
being discussed. And in political terms, the idea of a deep fake, where I can take
that happens with AI.
This camera taking my thing, he could morph that to say all sorts of obnoxious things to you. But thankfully he won't.
You can say all kinds of...
In my head. But it stays in my head is my point. The other thing that I think that is another crisis that's coming up, where I think again this will be a good form of resistance, and which is why it's kind of important to run it as a parallel pedagogy in design schools, is the commodification of design.
Yes.
So you are actually prioritizing that almost Gandhian selflessness about using design skills and being able to do this micro design, or being that facilitator rather than the author.
Yeah.
Right? And that ego that Dadi was talking about is very much present in designers, because we like authorship.
Yeah.
Right?
So I do satisfy that in another space where community becomes a laboratory, but...
No, but I think this is an important thing to think about, because at what point in time as designers are we, where is that line of commodification where our ethics gets muddled? And then finally, the oppression of the image that I spoke about, I think the way design is taught in schools in India, I don't know, I have no experience outside India, because the only education and exposure to education that I've had is in India. I suspect the bigger problem there will be this oppression of expertise. So the fact that you can empower an IIM graduate to do a storyboard,
Right.
or what's going through their heads.
Yeah.
Or to look at a management problem as a comic book, I mean, for the
Yeah.
lack of a better.
Yeah.
And with all that sort of, enhancements that you expect from a graphic novel, we can hopefully take design into a publicly accessible space where you don't need to be a design expert to be able to open your mouth, where you can actually express yourself and say that I don't like this design. Like the public art that happened at Ames, now Vibhor spent a lot of time talking about that being, germs, not germs as in the Ames type of germs, but germs as in stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Those steel things. And I found that a lot of people who are educated and stuff kind of responded extremely in a very stilted way, where they were saying that, it's contemporary art. Do you like it? Nah, well, it can grow on me. And you're like, of course, it's a germ, it'll grow on you. But then I had an auto driver type experience, and he's like, mस्त है, चमकता है,
हाँ.
रात को दूर से दिखता है, ऐसे ही होना चाहिए.
Yeah.
And that's I think something, that lack of this oppression of expertise, where because you're an expert, everything has to be like a
Yeah.
certain way.
Yeah.
I think these are really important for kids in design school to inculcate or be exposed to, because all those oppressions actually afflict those kids in school, in design school. So whether you try and do it in high school or you try and, but do keep at it and more power to you, I think.
Thanks. Asaf.
I don't have a question. No, because I said it in those two words. So it'll be wonderful for me and my studio to engage with you a couple of times. That's what it will help us crack ourselves. Thank you.